You have tuned in to Be the Voice podcast, where we are using our voices to shatter the silence by promoting healing from past trauma, aiming for victorious living, and uplifting the work to improve our communities. It's time to be informed, encouraged, and empowered with your favorite host, Dee Marie. Well, good evening and welcome to Be the Voice podcast. This is your host, Dee Marie, and thank you all so much for tuning in. We are back for another week. We have another amazing show, and what do I always say? I'm so excited because that's just who I am. I am so excited. I just love bringing you content so that you guys can be informed, encouraged, and empowered. Just different people that have come on the podcast and has just truly been a blessing for me, and I hope as well as you. But before we get started, let me let you know that Be the Voice podcast is actually brought to you by Voices Magazine. And Voices Magazine is an online magazine that is tailored to the voices of sexual abuse survivors. And inside the magazine includes a feature story of a survivor. And then we have Counselor's Corner, tips and safety, healthy living, fashion and beauty, and we also spotlight organizations in the community that are actually out in the field doing the work. So even if you're not a survivor and you say, you know what, that magazine is not for me, I beg to differ. It actually is for you. So if you want to get your copy, go to vocesmagazine.com, and it's VOSAS magazine.com, and you can purchase your copy there. Now, we do have one coming up soon. We're supposed to have one in March, but that didn't happen. So we do have one coming out for April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So stay tuned for that. And we'll have some more things coming out for April. So we're really excited about that as well. So if you need resources or any information as it relates to anything with sexual assault, you can email us at info@vocesmagazine.com, and that's info@VOSASmagazine.com. Well, as you know, March is Women's History Month, and we've been having Girl Talk all month. And today we have another amazing guest. I'm super excited to bring her on. She has such a sweet spirit, and we're going to talk a little bit about heart health, which is so important, especially in our community. We know that, and I myself deal with high blood pressure. So we definitely want to have this conversation. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Debora Grandison. Let's go ahead and get her in the studio here. Debora, how are you?
Hi, Dee Marie. So glad to be here with you this evening.
Well, we appreciate you being on the podcast. Just cannot wait to get into this conversation. I know you and I have connected, and you honestly, I know I don't know you well. I haven't known you long, but you have such a sweet spirit. And I always love connecting to people, women that are just genuine and have a passion of things that they are that they do and are passionate about. So glad to have you on the program. And I think your topic is so important. And all of us need to hear your story so that we can be informed and that we can now take better care of ourselves. So go ahead and you can kind of introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay. Well, again, my name is Debora Grandison. I am a 34-year heart disease and diabetes survivor.
Wow.
And so a lot of what I speak to with my own LLC, She Speaks from a Joyful Heart, is really a combination of education, advocacy. Also, it has now branched into what a lot of people will say is a form of ministry, because the journey started when I was pregnant with my second child. I went into preterm labor, and I ended up in intensive care because the doctors were trying to stop labor. And they were giving me medications and kind of sharing with me what they thought was going on with me. And it ended up that I was actually misdiagnosed for over 20 years.
Oh, wow.
I was diagnosed with something called mitral valve prolapse. And, I don't want to use a lot of technical terms because,
but I have been diagnosed with that as well.
Okay.
Yes.
So yes. Well, so of course, then it's regarding a valve that isn't opening and shutting properly and causing the blood to flow properly and the heart to beat as it should. And so at the time that I was pregnant, I was in the hospital. I was due to have my son in January, and this happened in October.
Oh,
So I
wow.
was hospitalized for quite a large amount of time while they tried to figure out what was going on. There were several other diagnoses that took place, and that meant different medications, of course.
Yeah.
But the mitral valve prolapse is what ended up being the supposed diagnoses. So they treated me with mitral valve prolapse medication for a 20-year time frame.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Yes, and so my son was born healthy, thank God, and I was also diagnosed with gestational diabetes at the time. So there
Hmm.
were a lot of things going on in the body, and as we know, if having a baby, there are a lot of transitions and changes that our bodies
Yeah.
go through, right?
Yes.
So um, the diabetes, I went back to what they would say normal, but they said that 95% of women will go back to normal and may, in fact, have some issues with diabetes later on down the road. However, that was not my story. It was
Mhm.
probably about 2 years later that I ended up having blood glucose levels of 683.
Oh,
Now,
my.
that may not mean a lot to many, and it certainly didn't to me at the time because I
Right.
was new at this game, right?
Yeah.
And so the doctor that saw me that day said, "Well, ma'am, I want to explain it to you this way. Most people with 683 blood glucose levels aren't sitting up speaking."
Oh, wow.
So that gave me an idea of, what could have potentially been, the occurrence. Um, but I want to bring up the diabetes too, because what I didn't know then, Dee,
Hmm.
was that heart disease, that diabetes was a risk of heart disease at that time. So when they diagnosed me with gestational diabetes, they started me on insulin, and they said you could risk blindness, you could risk amputation, you could risk kidney issues, and that was what I was told. It
Mm.
wasn't until many years later that it finally said that cardiovascular disease or the diabetes is a risk of cardiovascular disease. And
Right.
so I think that's an important factor. And one of the other reasons why I advocate so strongly for other women, because I was 27 years old when all this started, and there were
Oh,
so many things
my
that were
God.
going on, and there were so
Yeah.
many questions that I had that I wish I would have had someone that I could have spoken to, or someone who was out advocating on my behalf
Yes.
at
Yes.
that
Yes.
time to help
Yeah.
me become more knowledgeable. So let's see. So I went back to normal, so to speak, with the diabetes, and then ended up having that issue with the having to be placed on insulin again. But my husband got a transfer to Missouri. We were actually in Minnesota at the time when I
Oh,
was
okay.
pregnant.
Okay.
So of course, new state, new doctors.
Yes. Yes.
And as I went to different doctors trying to find the right fit, which is an important factor also when I talk about advocating for yourself, finding that right fit with the right physician is absolutely imperative. And I'm sure you know that. And,
Yes.
and so I went to a lot of doctors who would listen to my heart. They would hear something, but they couldn't quite figure out what was going on. So I did a lot of testing. I did cardiac catheterizations, which is an invasive procedure. They're checking to see if there are any blockages. I did a lot of Holter monitors. And I
Hmm.
don't know if you've had to wear a Holter monitor, but where they're monitoring your heart over a 24 to 48-hour period to
Okay.
see how are you at rest? How are you when you're active? What's going on? How is your heart functioning? And then I also did quite a few stress tests, which would be either treadmill or the dreaded chemical stress tests, which I do not like at all. That they
Right.
actually give you a chemical to stress your heart and to test it because you're not
Oh,
able to do the treadmill.
okay.
That
Okay.
is that's a tough one for me. So, but so a lot of different testing over the years, and going to the hospital. My husband was taking me to the hospital periodically because I'd have left arm pain, I'd have heart palpitations, extreme
Yes.
heart
Hmm.
palpitations, right? Shortness of breath, all of those kinds of things that most of us would think means heart attack.
Right.
So,
Exactly. I was going
right.
to say that you're probably scared. Yeah. That you were having a heart attack. Yeah.
Very scary, yes. So I would always come away with, well, it wasn't that. So they'd send you back home. And I just had to do a lot of homework on my own because I did not know what I was experiencing. And I questioned everything. I
Mm.
questioned the doctors. I questioned
Right.
my own feelings. Like when I have palpitations, am I really feeling this? What's
Right.
going on? Am I crazy? I mean, there's all these things that our bodies go through. And I even had a doctor give me medication to treat every symptom I was experiencing, to the point I was on 13 different meds at once.
Oh, wow. And you were, and this is the age of 27. Or
Oh,
I
well, it
should,
was a little bit, yeah,
young.
I'd say
Okay. Okay.
probably, we probably moved 4 years later to
Okay.
Missouri.
Okay. But
So,
still, you were
so I was
still young.
still, yeah,
Yeah.
still quite
Yeah.
young. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, when now being on, all those different meds, they were all interacting with one
Right.
another, right?
Exactly.
And
Yes.
causing their
Yes.
own issues, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, am I ashamed that I allowed a doctor to put me on all those different meds? Sure, because I didn't know. But
Right.
I'm taking every piece of what happened to me and putting it together. I think of it as a puzzle
Yeah.
where it can help someone else. And that's
Exactly.
why I'm
Exactly.
so passionate about this.
Yes. Yes.
And oh, and I do want to mention, during this time frame of not having answers, I lost three family members to diabetic related heart issues.
Oh, wow.
My
Wow.
father
Wow.
died of a stroke. His brother died of a heart attack 3 months later. And my brother died at 35 of a massive heart attack.
Oh, wow.
So I was living in fear.
Yes, of
I
course.
was watching the clock. I
Mm,
was believing that I was going to suffer that same fate.
mm,
And all of those things coming together helped me to begin to understand the importance of encouragement,
yes.
encouraging myself. It strengthened my faith.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that
I
leads to
have
She Speaks. So,
so many questions because you brought up some great, great, great points. Number one, you said that you had to advocate for yourself. Now, as you were going through like these different diagnoses and all the medications, I know a lot of times we do, and of course we should follow our doctor, but were there moments where you were thinking like, okay, they're telling me, like you said, you didn't really trust a lot of doctors, but were you thinking to yourself, okay, I really need to figure out what exactly is happening, or did you kind of just listen to everything they said? The reason why I'm asking that is because I do know that sometimes when we get different diagnoses, like you said, I did have was diagnosed with mitral valve prolapse when I was 23, when I had my second child,
okay.
and I have three kids. And when I had my second one, I was having heart palpitations. I was having different symptoms like you did, and they gave me an echocardiogram and said that I had mitral valve prolapse. So they gave me medicine, but honestly, I wasn't on it for a long time. They really didn't do a whole lot because I guess they figured it was mild, so nothing really was done. But when you, so why did you feel that you had to advocate for yourself instead of just putting faith in what the doctors are saying? Because I think this will help other people.
Yes. So, I was told so many different things in a very short amount of time.
Mm,
And when you get to a place where you're calling your doctor's office and saying, "Can someone please help me?" Because
mm,
I knew physically I
right,
wasn't feeling normal.
right,
And
right.
that's one of the things that's important, as you know,
Yeah,
that when you're feeling a certain way, there are times when we try to shut it off,
yeah,
or we're like,
yeah,
maybe I'm making this up in my head, or maybe I'm not feeling this way. And sometimes doctors are telling you that. I
yes,
had
yes,
doctors
you
tell
are.
me that. The doctor that gave me 13 meds told me that I was merely no more than anxious. There was nothing wrong.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's
And
talk
they
about
handed
that
me,
too.
yeah,
Yeah,
and they handed me a
yeah.
box of Prozac.
Wow.
And thank goodness I didn't take it. And so I really also like to tell people that it's important, as you advocate for yourself and you educate yourself by reading up and knowing the risks and symptoms and all those things, that God has to be a really strong part of your whole journey.
Yes,
And,
yes, yes,
trusting and relying in the Holy Spirit. You know your body better than the doctor does,
yes,
because you're the one living with those things. And if you have any questions, we can never be too afraid or ashamed to ask. We have to. And then
yes,
if we're not getting the answers we need, we have to keep moving forward until
yes.
we get someone to listen to us.
Yeah. So when so at the time, and this made me think of this when I was going after I had my son, like I don't know if it's postpartum. I was just dealing with a lot of, emotions at that
Yes.
time. And so I kept going to the doctor because I felt like I was going to faint, like my heart was racing. They did say I had mitral valve prolapse, but I kept going. I'm like, there is something wrong with me. So they took my blood, they did every test possible. And they said, okay, is there something going on in your life right now? And I said, well, I have a 1-year old and a newborn. And they said, okay. So they left the room, came back with a prescription of Xanax and said, you have anxiety. And so I did take it and it did help me. It calmed me down. So I possibly really probably did have anxiety, but I knew that there was something going on that was just not right. And I made them take all the tests because I was steady going to the doctor. Now I didn't end up with diabetes or anything, but I did have high blood pressure, I think at the time. But I think it was just right after I had my son. And I'm just being transparent. but after that, I mean, at the time, I guess I did have anxiety because it did eventually, I calmed down a little bit and I didn't stay on the Xanax. It was only for 30 days. Just, and they said it was as needed if I ever felt anxious. But it's interesting. I mean, now that I'm looking back, it's interesting that they said that to me. I don't know if anything else was going on. They took all the blood work and everything, but sometimes I'm like, maybe I should have advocated for myself a little bit more. But I was young. I was like 23 years old. I didn't know. But that's interesting that they told you that as well.
Yes. Well, so let's think about it though. Anxiety is going to be a part of your story because you don't know what's going on. So
Yes.
yes, that is normal. But
Yes.
the decision to put us on anti-anxiety medications, was not the appropriate,
Right. Right.
decision.
Right.
We just don't know. But don't you feel like what you went through and what you learned from it is so helpful and you can help other people?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Because I think, unfortunately, and like you were saying, you had family members that passed away from heart disease, and I can't speak for your family member personally, but I do know in our community, in the African American community, we unfortunately, like older generations, they hide those kinds of things. So sometimes we don't know our history. We don't know if family members had heart problems. I don't know what that is, that whole, that what goes on in the house stays in the house. But like, we need to be honest with our health, with our kids, so that they can, at certain ages, go get preventative screenings and things like that. So they won't be guessing, when things come up as far as heart disease.
No, absolutely. And so sometimes it's not really recognized that 80% of heart related issues is preventable. 80%. That's huge, right?
Wow.
The
That's
the
huge.
things that are not preventable, age, ethnicity, gender, those things we can't change, but we
Yes.
can change some of the other outcomes by healthy lifestyle, making
Yes.
some particular changes, and making sure we know our numbers. I always ask that question: do you know your numbers? A lot of
Do you?
people don't
Yes.
even know what that means.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's a question even for people who are listening and watching. Do you know your numbers?
Yes, and
Because
may I share what those particular numbers are?
absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
so those numbers, of course, are blood pressure, blood glucose levels, or as we know it, blood sugar levels,
Okay.
our cholesterol, and our BMI, which is our body mass
Good.
index.
Good.
Because we're hearing, that obesity
Yeah.
is another cause of some of the chronic
Yes.
issues that we deal with. So those numbers, those four numbers, are so crucial to our being able to take the preventative steps, excuse me, getting tongue tied, preventative steps to help us to make better decisions and choices in our health. And
Yes.
sometimes that's missed.
It is, Miss. So let me ask you too. So with your as you start to deal with, and face like the heart issues and kind of go on that journey, what did, as far as like your healthy lifestyle, did you change anything with that so that way your numbers will get better?
Oh, absolutely. So I don't know if I could mention this, but I am a strong supporter and member of Girl Trek. You
Oh
know, Girl Trek
yeah,
is a
yes,
national
yes,
organization
yes,
designed to help women of color to, take preventative steps towards walking at least
yes.
30 minutes a day. And so, as a diabetic, I can tell you, there's sometimes, people might say, well, I'm not seeing any difference or I'm not seeing any changes. But for me, as a diabetic, when I go out for a walk, if my blood glucose levels are a little bit higher than they should be, I can instantly see a difference. That
Oh
tells me there's
wow.
a great change that happens when you're out getting that 30 minutes at least of exercise a day. And it's important. It's empowering. It
It
really
is.
is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Girl Trek. They actually did because I used to do walks for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and they actually came out one year to walk as well.
Oh,
So, but I'm glad you mentioned that because I think too is, and even with like the pandemic, we were all inside and kind of just, and I'm guilty, sat down and the weight gained the weight, all of that. But I do get my numbers checked, so that is one thing I'm really, I stay with get my numbers checked, and that's something I have to do yearly anyway for my insurance purposes. But I do get those checked. But I think it's important for us to stay active.
yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. We've got
yeah,
to have that active lifestyle, keep it moving. You think about all the things that happen. So, not only, the blood glucose levels, but, cholesterol is lower, blood pressure is lowered. All those things are impacted by just a little bit of movement. And if we
yeah,
can do it
yeah,
each day, we're really on the right track.
yeah. And like you said, 30 minutes, and honestly, 30 minutes will fly by. You could be doing it while you're watching TV or whatever, but I think it's really, really important to stay on top of that. So, with your journey, I know you said it kind of has turned into your ministry. So, let's talk about that.
Oh, yes. She speaks from a joyful heart. So, that became apparent to me at some point in time when I lost family members. And I won't say I went into like a depression, but of course, it was quite a struggle to kind of get back up, when
Wow.
you're losing family members and you
Yeah.
still don't have answers. And I will just make sure that I share with you. In 2009, I ended up getting a pacemaker put in,
Oh, wow.
pacemaker installed, and that helped because what they discovered was I had an electrical issue versus
Okay.
a plumbing issue, is so the doctor says. So, and a lot of people don't recognize that there are so many other kinds of heart-related or cardiovascular things. The first thing people say is, "Oh, you're a survivor, so you had a heart attack." And so, I think it's
Oh,
important that people
okay.
know there are a
Right.
lot that can go on with the heart. And so I have an electrical issue, and it has been resolved with this pacemaker. And I just recently had my second battery replacement, and that went well. And then I also do wear an insulin pump.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so along the journey, I was looking for something to encourage myself because here again, I've lost family. I'm
Right.
still don't have answers, and I'm like, what do I do? And so I would always sit and write. And of course, I would always go back to what's first and foremost, and that is my relationship with God.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I would
Absolutely.
just write about, I knew that God loved me. I
Yes.
knew that He was my source, my
Yes.
protector, my
Yes.
comforter, my shield, all of those things, right? And so I found myself just writing a little something. And it just began to be more and more and more. And it led to, I can't tell you the day that it turned into poetry, but
Wow.
poetry is my favorite, my absolute favorite. And I ended up writing this book, which so I don't know if you can see it, but His Poetry, Her Story is the
Oh,
name of the book.
beautiful.
And it's
Beautiful.
filled with inspirational poems and prayers. And so I'm a huge prayer warrior as well because I understand the power
The
of our
power.
words. I
Yes.
understand the power of prayer. I
Yes.
understand that when we're in a situation, we must renew our thoughts.
Right. Right. I
We've
apologize.
got
My
to,
dog is making all this
oh,
Yeah, so I apologize if you hear him. So if
oh,
you're listening to hear him, that's just my dog. Okay, I apologize. Go ahead.
okay. I thought somebody was singing like, yes, and amen.
Yes.
But we've got to renew our thoughts. And so um, She Speaks became something important to me because I have been speaking for the American Heart Association, for Women Heart over a number of years. And that's the advocacy side and the educational side of
Yes.
sharing about risks and symptoms and all the things that we do to help people, encourage them along their journey, but also um, encouraging people that your thoughts are so important in your healing.
Right.
And if
Right.
you're dealing with some things that, a health issue or anything, just renewing your thoughts and placing your full trust in your faith, looking to your faith to help you. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
I have a number of people who have purchased the book and they're using it as a devotional.
Oh,
Um, there are
nice.
book clubs who
Book
I've
clubs.
been doing
Yeah.
virtual,
Yeah.
talks about the different poems. There's just an amazing array of poetry that's in the book. And a lot of those come from either when I've been asked to speak at some event, and then also just the creative side of My Heart Belongs to You, Lord, is an important one to me because there are other people living with electrical issues or
Yeah.
issues where their heart doesn't beat the same as everyone else's. But
Right.
God created that heart for you, for that
Right.
person, and just giving them some encouragement, something uplifting to know that in spite of your challenges, you know, God loves you and He is going to guide you through every situation and circumstance. It's about giving God the glory in
Yes.
each and every circumstance that we
Yes, yes,
face.
yes, yes. I think that is so amazing because we even in those times, we do have to give God the glory because like you said, I love what you said. He created that heart. He knows everything about us, every part of our body. He knows. So we have to stay close to him so he can be with us during those times as we go through those journeys. Yes,
Amen.
yes, 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 yes.
Amen. Yes.
Um, so now do you speak a lot to like on platforms or things like that regarding She Speaks or regarding your own personal journey?
Yes, actually, all of the above. I have spoken locally and also nationally because I was in 2019 selected as one of the 8 national Go Red for Women spokespersons.
Oh, nice.
And
Beautiful.
and I've actually done some global speaking as well for a company like Medtronic Corporation. They were the creator of my pacemaker, and so they flew me to Minnesota to speak to their executives and research team about a particular new technology that we were using. And so that went all the way to Switzerland, and I've spoken
Wow.
to another one of their venues I think it was in the Netherlands, done some global virtual things, of course.
Yes, yes,
But
yes.
yes, and then I had an opportunity. There's a online women's health platform called Women's Health. I'm sorry, Healthy Women, and they're out of New York, and they flew me to New York to speak to some top cardiologists from across the country, sharing
Oh,
my
wow.
personal story and journey. And
That's
so,
awesome.
yes, but now it's about She Speaks. I will always be an advocate,
Yeah.
always. But I'm very excited about what I'm believing that God is going to do in and through She Speaks, because
Yes.
again, it's about really helping people make choices about how they view their own situation and circumstances and how they can still choose joy in spite of.
Wow, wow. So I want to know what would you say to people that maybe are kind of stubborn about going to get checked out or going to the doctor or maybe scared? Some people don't go because they're scared of the unknown. They don't know what the doctor's going to say. They know that something's going on, but they're just not quite sure. Like, should they go to the doctor or how would you encourage them? What would you say to them to say, you know what, you need to go?
Well, that's interesting you said that. So you see, I've got on my red dress pin.
Yes,
I
yes,
wear a red dress pin always, and one of the reasons why is because not always the fancy one, but I wear one when I go to the beach, everywhere, because it's a conversation starter. It's about heart disease awareness, and people will
yes.
ask, "Well, what is that?" Well, I'm glad you
I'm glad
asked.
you asked.
So
Yeah.
when I'm talking to people, a lot of times people will open up and say, "Oh, you know what? My dad, he has heart disease, or my mom, she's dealing with such and such." And I'll say, "Have you been checked?" And I am amazed at how many people look at me like I have 8 heads. Like, why?
Wow. Wow.
So us getting to the point where we're helping people understand, number one, as you spoke about, knowing family history is
Yes.
absolutely key.
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
didn't know my family that passed away had diabetes at the time, and then again they were diabetic related heart issues, and so it is important for us to speak about that. I just encourage people to want to know what their health, how their health is. If they have family, they want to be their best for their family. You have
Right.
people with children
Right.
and grandchildren. You want your grandchildren to grow up with you in their life, right? You're like,
Right.
do what you need to do to give them a great example, right?
Right.
Sometimes maybe
Exactly.
that's the key is
Yes.
what kind of example are you setting for for the future, you
And
know?
honestly, I'm glad you said that because I try to talk to my kids about make sure you get they're young. I mean, they're in their 20s, but it's never too early to start. I believe, yeah, because a lot of
That's
times
right.
they especially people in their 20s. Oh, I'm young, I got time. But if you feel like something is going on, I don't care how old you are. It's important to get those things checked out.
Absolutely. And so my children are in their 30s now. And so I told them, they probably like, what does predisposed mean? Because I was saying that when they were young, you're predisposed to diabetes and heart
Right.
disease. They're like, oh my goodness, what is,
What is
but
that?
I've been saying that for so long. And they both really try to take really good care of themselves. And I'm so grateful for that because
Yes.
we have to start this early. And
Yes.
and I do things at schools and I
Oh,
do things with seniors because we've got to start with the young people.
yeah.
Sometimes it's the young people that go home and say, "Hey, I just heard this talk about heart disease today," and sometimes they're the ones who can help us
Yes,
to
that's
do better,
good.
right?
Right, 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 right. Because honestly, young kids, like you said, if you impart that knowledge in them, they will go back home and say, hey, especially kids these days, they're much more vocal than we were, a long time
Yes,
ago. So they will go home and talk to their parents or their grandparents about, all kinds of things. So,
yes.
oh my gosh, I hate my brain sometimes because I had a question, but I can't remember what it was. But um I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think too, um, sometimes we take for granted just even things that we eat, water, I always talk about that, and even different medicines that we're on that could cause things to go on with inside of us because like my blood pressure medicine is it's a water pill as well. So if I don't drink enough water, it causes me to be dehydrated,
Yes.
and that could cause heart palpitations and everything. Trust me, I have been there. I know, potassium is low, all of that because of my medication. So I think another thing too, like you said, is like we have to be aware, I guess, of even the side effects of even medications.
I'm so glad you said that, Dee, because that's the other thing. A lot of times we're given certain things and then we're sent on our way.
Yes,
And there's
yes,
no
yes.
clear, definitive understanding about. Now, there may be some, side effects, or there may be
Right.
some, I saw side effects on every one of those 13 different meds. That's why I got put on another one. Oh, you're having that? Okay, well,
Now
here,
let's give
take
you
this.
this. Yes,
And
yes.
that's very scary. And it's when I go out and speak, I was just real quick, this one particular thing comes to mind. I went to speak to a senior group, and one of the women in the group said that she had just had an EKG done that day. And she said, the doctor told me that my EKG was abnormal. And she looked at me and she said, what does that mean? And I was devastated because I'm thinking, you just left the doctor's office and they
Right.
did not help you
Tell
to
you.
understand, have an
Wow.
understanding. So, but that happens. I
Yes.
know it for myself, and you can probably speak to that as well.
Yes,
And so
absolutely.
I just encouraged her to make sure that she went back to the doctor and asked for very specifics about what that meant and what can be done about it to help her manage and get the answers that she needed. But it's happening way too often.
It is, yeah. Because the only reason why I knew like my medicine would cause dehydrations because I had like like my heart was just racing, and I actually went to the emergency room and they said your potassium is like super low, but I didn't know it was a side effect of the medication that I was on, you know. And I was like, wow, I'm glad I know now, but I didn't know. You know, all I knew was that I was just feeling crazy. So they told me that I had to, well, I think at the time, I think they put me on potassium, but I have to make sure that I eat those things like bananas, sweet potatoes, those things
Yes.
that will keep me, you know, my potassium at, I guess, a normal level. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
No, that's good. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and I think those things are important too, because heart health, you know, and even I think about, you know, what we eat, you know, at Thanksgiving and you know,
yes.
all the pork and all of that, we used to put like ham hocks in our greens, you know, things like that, which now I use turkey, I try to do smoked turkey,
We do
but
too. Yeah.
but I think it's important too to even, mention that as far as food, salt intake, all of those things that we eat. And I'm speaking to myself, I'm preaching to the choir because I know that I have to get better as far as watching what I eat as well. And now, do you advocate for that as well, which I'm sure you do, as far as eating healthy?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always an opportunity to, when you're out speaking, sharing different things. I do a thing that I put together on food labeling because I think that was something that was being missed as well.
Oh,
I just
wow.
did that recently where I took in some cereal boxes, for example. So a lot of times people don't realize that if a cereal has 5 grams or higher of fiber in it, it actually reduces the amount of carbs that you're getting. And
Oh,
so
okay.
that may not be as crucial to a lot of people, but for someone
Right.
who might be having diabetes issues,
Yes.
that
Yes.
is important, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
food labeling, when we think about sodium, I take in cans of soup and I say, how many of you eat this can of soup? And of course, everybody says, yes, we grew up eating
Right.
pouring it in, right?
We sure
And
did.
so
Yes.
I'm like, do you realize that you're getting 2 servings of soup? And that means that you're also increasing your sodium intake.
Yes.
And people are
Yes.
like, what? Those are
Yeah.
things that are missed unless
Yeah.
someone is sharing those things with you and kind of giving you the guidelines. And it's, of course, it's up to us. When we know better, they say when we know better, we do
We
better.
do better.
But you've been given
Absolutely.
the information, and that's why I feel it's important to be doing what I do, is to make sure that people do know.
Yes. Yes. And I think too, when it comes to health, I think sometimes we overthink it because honestly, we know. I mean, there's really no magic to it. Eat right and exercise.
Right, right.
Drink tons of water. So our veggies, our fruit, our getting that 30 minutes a day of exercise and drinking water, 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 I think will decrease a lot of our issues, as far as when it comes to health. And let's talk about getting those checkups that we have to get yearly or semi-annually or however your doctor tells you to go in. It's important to actually go. And again, I am guilty. I've been like, oh, well, I'll just push it back to, the next time. But I think it's important to stay on top of those things.
Oh, absolutely. And one of my favorite things to talk about is when we think about going on a flight. What are we told? We got to put our oxygen mask on first in
Yeah,
order to assist
yeah,
someone else with us. It's the
yeah,
same thing for our health.
yes,
We've got to take into consideration all the things that are necessary for us to be healthy, because there are other people in our lives, whether it be our parents, our children, grandchildren. There are other people who are counting on us, to be
yes,
around and to thrive and survive.
yes,
We were made to live life to the fullest, and in order to do that, we've got to make some changes sometimes.
yes, 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 we do. Um, I would love to at some point do something with you as regard to like your she speaks, and also just talk about just being healthy. I think it's so important, because like you said, obesity, just what we're eating, just all kinds of things. I think that people need to know so that we can live longer. We want to live a long life. You know, we want to. We want to enjoy life and be outside and do all these things. But I think too, even with that, it probably reduces stress. I'm sure you probably feel better than you've ever felt.
You know what? Stress, and that's another thing. When we think about diabetes, for example, if your blood glucose levels are up, you might say, well, let's see, I haven't had any sugar. Stress can throw your numbers off like
Wow.
nobody's business.
Wow.
So it is important to try to maintain and manage. And that goes along with any other kind of chronic illness, right?
Yeah.
Cancer. We want to really work on having a great meditative, process or program or something where we're able to find those moments of peace,
Yeah.
because it's so important. We're all dealing with so many stresses today.
Yes, yes, we are. Yes, we are. Okay, so I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you have a poem that you would like to? If you don't, it's fine.
Yay!
But if you would
Okay,
like
but
to,
okay,
cite one.
okay. Let me see. So there are a couple that I. So I'll tell you the first poem in the book is called "I Pray You Joy,"
Okay.
and people ask the question. Uh, Someone asked me. They said, "Well, what do you want this book if you decide to do a book?" At the time, I was doing a blog, and it reached about 10,000 views.
Oh, wow.
And so I said, I just want everyone to experience joy. And this was way before I even thought about She Speaks from a Joyful Heart. It was like God kept nudging me towards joy. Joy.
Yes,
It's all about
yes.
joy. So I have that one, but I don't know. I have this one I feel like I'm supposed to share, and it's called Jubilation. So I'd like to
Okay,
share that
yeah.
if I may.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
Real quick story for Jubilation. A friend of mine from high school is an artist, and she lived in Mexico at the time. She sent me a beautiful picture of just splashes of color. And she said, Hey, Deb, she'd never done this before. Um, I'm sending you this picture. Can you name this piece? And it was just reds and yellows, greens and blues, just beautiful color, right?
Uh-huh.
And the first name that came to mind was Jubilation.
Oh,
And little did she
beautiful.
know I
Okay.
was going to actually write a piece to go along with it.
Oh, wow. Oh,
So,
that's awesome.
okay. In Genesis 1, God laid the foundation. He molded and shaped the earth, the world, and the nation. He added the sun, the moon, and the stars and designed planets like Jupiter, Venus, and Mars. God gave meaning to darkness as well as to light and declared all things precious in his pure sight. God brightened the world with vivid colors and hues. He began with the reds and greens, yellows and blues. God gave life to the world, and so it began, and he formed in his own image and likeness a man. Man was created to love, and God truly loved him. God wanted man's light to shine and to never grow dim. God's plans for his children is to flourish and grow and to tell others about him wherever they go. We must study God's word and protect his creation and do so in love, peace, and jubilation.
Oh, that is, look, that's beautiful. That's
Thank you.
beautiful. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm.
Well, Deborah, we're gonna wrap things up. But is there any last words you want to encourage the viewers or listeners about She Speaks, or just about anything in general?
Well, I would like to say that I am willing, open, and to talk about what you spoke about earlier. I would love to do that. I
Yes,
do want to make sure that that we as women understand that 1 in 3 women will be impacted by cardiovascular disease. Di- uh, heart heart disease is the number one killer of women, and it kills more women than all cancers combined.
oh, wow, 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 wow.
And so we want to do things to help our mothers, our friends, our sisters, our loved ones, that we are just really paying attention to heart health. It's important. And women of color, we are
Yes,
disproportionately impacted by
yes, we
cardiovascular
are.
disease and diabetes.
Yes.
And so we've got to be out there encouraging one another. We are better together. And iron sharpens iron, Proverbs
Yeah.
27:17.
Yeah.
So let's look
Oh my
at
God.
helping one another to be our best, to do our best, and to live our best life and keep our hearts healthy and strong.
Yes. Deborah, thank you so much for sharing all of this. This is so necessary. These are conversations that we have to continue to have. Like, we can't have it one time and not talk about it again. I think it's important that we continue to have this. And what month is actually Heart Health Month?
February is Heart Month.
February. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
And if they want to reach you, where can they reach you?
They can reach me on Instagram at From a Joyful Heart, on Facebook, Debora, Debora Grandison,
Okay.
and then let's see, LinkedIn, Debora Grandison, Twitter, Debora Grandison at Teach and Bless.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Deborah, for being on Be the Voice podcast. I know that this will bless many people that are listening, that are watching. And if you are watching, listening, go check your numbers. Make sure you get your numbers checked. It is so important. So stay on top of that, because we have many people that are counting on us. So again, thank you so much for being on the Be the Voice podcast. And we will talk to you soon, Deborah.
Thank you for all you do, Dee. God
Thank
bless
you.
you.
Thank you. God bless you as well.
All right.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another amazing episode of Be the Voice podcast. This was such a blessing. I don't know if if you got anything out of it, but I definitely did. And I'm so glad to have Debora on here, because these are conversations that are absolutely necessary. So again, thank you guys for always tuning in. Be sure to come back in April. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We actually have something amazing that's coming up the end of April, April 28th. We're going to have a live taping. Yes, a live taping with a studio audience of Be the Voice. And we are going to talk about the facts of sexual assault awareness. We're going to have experts on the panel. We're going to have survivors on the panel. And afterwards, we're going to open it up to questions and answers. And this will be a safe space. So anyone that wants to come, stay tuned. The link is coming where you can actually register to be a part of the studio audience. And then also there are giveaways. So we will be giving away some information, some little nice little goodies to the audience members that will be there. So be sure to look out for that, where you can register, because it's going to be very limited. We want it to be not huge, but a small, intimate space, because we want it to be safe. So again, that will be April 28th. More information to come. So be sure to look out for that, because we really want to have you guys there. So again, thank you so much for always tuning in to Be the Voice podcast. And we will see you back next week. And next week starts April, which is actually April starts Saturday. um, but it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we cannot wait to see you there. All right. We'll see you soon.